today is Mr. Ashish Agarwal, Vice President Public Policy at Nasscom. Mr. Agarwal, many thanks for speaking to PTI.
Thank you.
Well, the budget is just days away now, so let me start off by asking you what are Nasscom's top priorities for budget to strengthen India's global tech competitiveness?
See, budget 2026 comes in an interesting time. As an industry, I think both, if you look at it, these are also times which are challenging. And last year as an industry, we closed the revenues about $280 billion. And this year we are closer to, hopefully, to the 300 mark. But it has been a slow growth over the last few years, and combined with all the global challenges in terms of our key markets. So that's one context to keep in mind as we think about, tax policies. The second is also the fact that these are times for opportunities, because you have with AI coming in and newer opportunities which are opening up for the industry in terms of deployment, and also the domestic market is picking up. In fact, one of the interesting trend over the last couple of years is we are seeing that the domestic market is growing much faster than the export market, though the share is small. So given all of this, it's very interesting to look at now what we as an industry and as a government can really enable through a tax policy regime. So when you think about it, I think there are a lot of things which are clear. So at a meta level, what is clear is the policy intent, that the government is keen to enable business and growth, and given our status as a service sector in terms of its primary role in terms of the services, I think all of that is well established. Now there are small things which are really important, and when you add them up, they actually can play a significant lever. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you just think about international taxation, what we have heard over the last few years is the GCC story unfold in the country. The story was always happening, but it assumed scale in the last few years, to the extent that last year the finance minister also announced that India should have a GCC framework to really look at the expansion and growth. And now the IT ministry is working with the industry to work with the states in terms of rollout of that framework. So now when you think about taxation, the key taxation point for the GCCs is on transfer pricing and safe harbor. Now this again, because tax policy is a continuous process, what we have seen is that the finance minister and the finance ministries have recognized this and understood this as a lever which can be calibrated to further, increase the ease of doing business and attract more and more GCCs to establish and also grow in India. And we as Nasscom have engaged with the working groups which was set up by the government after the last year's budget also to look into this. So one key thing that we are hoping for is that we can look at the reforms of the safe harbor regime in a significant manner to align with the realities of the industry, so that a lot of the routine use cases in the GCCs can go through a green channel when it comes to a tax assessment and pay a tax which is in tune with the model, which is a cost plus model. The second part of this is the advanced pricing agreements, because they deal with more complex cases. And today that's not happening. Today a lot of the routine cases are also going. So when you fix the safe harbor, we also hope to achieve that. Then in the transfer pricing and the advanced pricing agreement, I think what the government has to do is to look at saying that how can we really shorten the timelines in concluding these advanced pricing agreements. And I think if you give credit to CBDT, they have been doing phenomenal work. But what is also happening is that the industry is growing faster than the capacity at the tax administration, and given the complex nature of this these agreements, it is not an easy thing. But I think what we are really hoping is that renewals can be done under 2 years, even the conclusion maybe can done under 3 years. So this is one example of what government can do, which will significantly enable ease of doing business for one big sector of the industry. And just staying on the international taxation, if you now look at the another trend which we can see in the last 2 years, and in some sense driven by AI, is this entire investments which are flowing into the data center ecosystem in the country. Now, when you think about these investments, we are probably, at a place where, as India, we probably have scope for a lot of these investments to come in. And obviously there are things about how these investments need to happen and energy. There are a lot of conversations around how we do it in a sustainable manner and so on and so forth. But one of the easy solve on a taxation side is that we can provide tax clarity that merely because there is an investment in the data center business from a foreign MNC, then it does not mean that that foreign MNC itself becomes is attributed a permanent establishment in India on account of that data center. So essentially what we want a clarity is that the data center should pay taxes on its profit as a data center business, which is very different from a cloud service provider business. So today that bright line is not so clear. So I think addressing that can be a good signal, and a lot of other countries have done it because these are multi-billion-dollar investments, and we genuinely think that from an overall ecosystem point of view, it is not something that actually has any unintended effects, because it ultimately the investments are flowing into the country. So I think one big aspect is this, and then of course there are other aspects which relate to startups, which relate to ease of doing business from an assessment point of view. So I can talk about some of this, but happy to take your feedback.
I want to come to those, but before that, if you look at the mainstay of IT, and really the crown jewel is the IT services business, and we are globally recognized for our strengths in IT services. However, US being our largest market, export market, has seen a lot of changes, be it visa or this whole buzz around outsourcing tax in terms of a HIRE Act that may come, which has really concerned the industry. As an industry, as an apex industry body, how do you look at these global uncertainties and their impact on IT services exports? And is there anything that the budget can do to ease the discomfort that Indian IT companies are facing today?
So, in some sense, navigating global uncertainties and global competition has been the DNA of this industry, even if you go back to last 40 years journey. And this industry has always come out stronger. So, and I think it is to the credit of the government that when, for example, you mentioned the visa issue, when it erupted, and I think a lot of work was done jointly with the industry and the government to get a set of clarifications, which then further, helped ease this understanding. But coming to your point, I think the nature of our industry's model, where there will always be an on-site and offshore model, I think that reality will continue to exist, and it will play out. From a budget point of view, I think this core industry, because they represent large enterprises, then small things add up and can become big. So I'll just give you a simple example. So for example, there is a concept of pre-deposit in appeals. So in GST, the government reduced the pre-deposit amount from 20% to 10%. So this is the amount you have to deposit when your case is in appeal, right? Now under Income Tax Act, this is still 20%. So reducing that unclogs working capital. So in that sense, that is one kind of an example. A second kind of an example is that today refunds can be adjusted against tax demands, which is fair. But what is happening is that there are tax demands which are stayed. So refunds should not be adjusted against, those demands should not be adjusted against the refunds. But because in the tax administration that clarity is not there, so even though a demand has been stayed, it is used to adjust the refunds. So again, these unclog working capital. Another common example in our industry is secondment of employees. So employees routinely work on secondment. So when they work on secondment, let's say when the employees come, even are deputed in India from overseas, then they are paid salaries, and these salaries are reimbursed to the parent entity. Now when this reimbursement is happening, a lot of the time the tax authorities treat this as payment as fee for technical services, and again require a withholding tax. So one, you are withholding tax as TDS, and second, then you are withholding tax on fee for technical services. So I think there are a lot of these things which if, and to the credit of the government, they are working on it. But what we are hoping is that instead of incremental improvements, we can see some significant improvements. So for example, appeals. So if you look at the data in terms of the faceless assessments, there are, I think, over 5 lakh appeals which are pending at the highest forum. And if you take the journey of an appeal from the lowest level to the highest level, it can take up to 20 years for an appeal to get addressed. Now, these are some of the things that can actually be, settled by boosting capacity and really improving the framework from an industry point of view. And I'll just mention one last point, and since we are talking about the IT-ITS industry, in mergers and acquisition, the way the industrial undertaking is defined, the set off and carry forward of losses at during this merger and merger stage is only permitted for, is not permitted for service industry. So now, given the trends in our industry where we are seeing a lot more mergers and acquisition happening, I think this is again an easy fix that can be taken up by the government. So all in all, I think there are a lot of areas where easing of tax administration can be done, which will directly impact the IT services industry. And yes, I just want to also add one more thing. When you look at the entire area of special economic zones, we have now transitioned, and it has been some years when we used to have tax holidays and so on and so forth. Now we are pretty much in the last leg of entities who are already established their units before the sunset came in, and the real value of the special economic zone today is the infrastructure there. So I think there is really merit for the government to now think that how they can re-incentivize and really take the SEZ to the next level. And I think we have some good even learning. So if you take the gift city model, now it is roughly about a decade, and now we are seeing traction where companies are getting attracted there, and that is modeled around the BFSI sector and fintech, and now they are also attracting techfin. So in some sense, that's the future. It is not just about the technology industry, it is technology industry meeting sectors. So in Gift City, it is meeting the fintech and the BFSI sector. There could be other areas where, and there are areas where, for example, it is also meeting the automotive sector, it is meeting the healthcare sector. So is there now an idea which government can take to say that this Gift City idea now has matured, where we can now start thinking of it in the context of other sectors like healthcare or automotive, and then place it in other locations which are today SEZs. So what is the future of SEZ? I think that is an important question for the industry. So our suggestions are in two parts. One part is that when you just look at the SEZ scheme, SEZ Act as it is, there are a lot of ease of doing measures which the government can undertake. Some of these are squarely within the domain of the Commerce Ministry, and some of them, because they require movement of equipment and movement of assets and depreciation and so on and so forth, these require the concurrence of the Ministry of Finance. So, so one set of reforms are to ease those small points. The second, which is a little bigger idea, is to look at that, can we look at the Gift City model and see how we can rework our SEZ model to take that model and apply it to other sectors. So these are the two things which are possibly up for consideration. Last area is around startups and deep tech, but I'm happy to talk about it if you have any more questions.
Please go on. On startups and deep tech, what are the specific asks from the government this budget?
So I'll break it into two parts. One is when you look at any tech startup, one of the key feature of tech sector startups is that in order to attract employees, there is a tendency to offer ESOPs. And this has been a long drawn discussion with the government over the years. You have been tracking this, and government recognizes this, that this is not a traditional perquisite. But what is happening is that after even the government recognized this a few years back, even today if you look at it, hardly a few thousand startups are eligible for the deferment of the taxation on the employee for the ESOP benefit. Now the tech startup landscape has really grown. So what we are looking for the government to do is to expand this so that more and more startups can actually be taking benefit of this deferment of taxation point from an ESOP perspective for employees. So it helps employees, and therefore it helps the tech startups. So I think this is point number one. Second, related to that, is that increasingly we are seeing disputes where the employer's deduction of the expense on account of ESOP, which is the fair value of the ESOP, is being disputed. So there are judgments which have clarified that this is genuine employer expense and should be allowed. Now, a simple thing that is required is a clarification from the government. So that we are hoping will come through. So that's really the general startup ecosystem. When we now think of deep tech, I think this is probably the most exciting space. So, and I don't think the recommendation there are so in a way transactional, if I may use the word when I was talking about the other recommendations. Here what is happening is that interestingly things are really coming together. So if you look at the journey over the last 2-3 years, what you are seeing is that we are seeing now the AI mission getting into execution phase. We got the quantum mission announced, and that we are looking forward to see actual action scale up. We have the ANRF, which is looking at how do we promote research and development in the country. Now, all of these missions and initiatives are really in some sense talking to deep tech. But the connect that we have to now make is that from R&D, how do we go to productizing and commercializing that research? And that will happen when our deep tech startup ecosystem will scale up. Now, one of the things which this deep tech startup ecosystem really lacks is the sustained funding. So what we have done as Nasscom and as industry is to look at various technology readiness levels as a deep tech startup grows. And what we have found is that after around TRL level 5, 6, that is where they face some kind of a death valley, where the funding kind of is scarce. So, and I think government recognizes this. So what we are hoping is that some of this can really translate into an action where the funding which is coming through from the ANRF and other missions which is available essentially for deep tech can be made available in a manner where the ecosystem can actually leverage it to also attract the private capital, and also really be done in a substantial manner, so that some of these startups we can start seeing them really grow as unicorns and winners from an India lens. And I think we have a good base of these startups now. So whether it is something that the finance minister has to do, whether it is now in the hands of ANRF and Department of Commerce and PSA's office and the MeitY ministry, I think everybody is a stakeholder in this. So I think this is something that we are really hoping that the finance minister can further, enable from a government and industry lens.
There's a lot of excitement around artificial intelligence. India is going to play host to the world on this whole AI narrative. And AI discourse. It will take the center stage, so to say, at the India AI Impact Summit next month, and some of the biggest, most prominent CEOs are headed as also heads of state from many countries. What can India expect, from this summit, and what is it that you're looking forward to? Are you also, organizing separate interactions between Indian CEOs, some of the largest IT companies that we have, and this this flood of global CEOs, prominent CEOs that are going to come in here? Anything also from the budget that you expect on AI, anything to sort of take it forward so far as India's leadership is concerned?
So let's answer it in two parts, right? The first part is more related to the summit itself. I think given the fact that it is an impact summit, it is only appropriate that the tech industry in India uses this opportunity to showcase the impact that it is already making and the impact that it is aiming for. So I think it is a very evolving situation, and there are a lot of exciting stuff which is out there in future, even though we are already seeing a lot of the impact of the technology play out. So in that sense, I think you're right. As a apex body for the tech services industry, we will be curating a lot of these discussions. We are also very active in the pre-summit stage, and we have been bringing the industry and the government and the academia and all set of ecosystem players across the AI value chain together. So I think this is a very good opportunity for us to build on this, and then we are obviously, as the industry, we are looking beyond the summit also to then carry forward that impact. Now, particularly from a budget perspective, I think no amount of resources and funds will be adequate. We have already seen that government over the last few years has put out a strong foot forward. Even if you look at what I didn't mention earlier, if you look at the PLI scheme, I think government has really tried to make it succeed, and we are seeing some of those outcomes. So I think no amount of money can be sufficient. But having said that, I think the thing to look at it is that how can we really enable frugal innovation, where we can be smart about innovation? How can we leverage industry, the ecosystem? So I think from an industry point of view, we are less looking for, from a government point of view, to so obviously we are looking for them to continue to build on the initiatives that have been launched, because that's very critical. So to the extent we see traction, government should continue to put in more resources, and so should the industry. But beyond that, I think it is really up to all of us, including the industry and the academia and the government, to collaborate. And I think it is that collaboration which will lead to commercialization and which will translate into real economic benefits from both the industry and economic lens, but also from the citizen lens. So in that sense, I think we are on the right direction. That's our understanding.
I mean, we are pitted against a $500 billion of funds so far as US tech companies are concerned, the Stargates and the like. So yes, of course, just financial money part of it is just one thing. The use cases is what India is gunning for, right? To become the use case capital of the world. Yesterday, the IT Secretary also alluded to it. Finally, coming to the guardrails, AI use cases, India wanting a leadership position, trying to build its own foundational models, some of which will probably debut in February next month at the AI Impact Summit. But what about guardrails? We have seen multiple cases where technology and now with AI has made it easier for people to inflict user harm. We have seen the case of Grok recently on the digital unrest, but even before that, government has been working on this draft for AI labeling, synthetic content labeling or watermarking. What are your thoughts on that?
We are a country of 1.4 plus billion people, and we have a very diverse kind of a population. It's very heterogeneous. So obviously, I think we need to be very careful, and we need to make sure that the citizens are not harmed. And you talked about deepfake. I think there are other harms which are really escalating, and we see more of that around financial frauds, digital arrest. So I think it is very important that a lot of these are addressed well. And it will be important even from an industry point of view, because any future success has to sit on a strong base of trust. So that will only happen if there is a strong trust which the citizens realize. So I think, having said that, it's also not so easy. So I think what the government has done, if you look at a few of the actions over the in the recent times. One, government came out with the AI guidelines as a framework. RBI came up with a similar report, which is again articulating safeguard and innovation first approach. So I think that has set the basis for a whole of government approach to AI governance itself. Now within that framework, I think government has the tools, which includes the IT Act, and we are seeing the DPIIT Act now. Hopefully in 2026, some of that will start coming into the effect with the board being set up soon. So I think in some sense, in this kind of issues in regulation, we have to make haste, but slowly. Now I think the government is doing that. There is a lot of consultation, and I think a more fundamental thing is that instead of regulations chasing harms, what we are seeing evolve is an approach where we can set technology-led guardrails. So, for example, the DPI stack is a good example of it. So, having set the identity layer, having set the payments layer, and of course, riding on the telecom layer, now we, for example, we can have a very strong, workable, scalable consent layer, which citizens can exercise effectively. So once you can make a effective consent real, then I think that is a good way of thinking about guardrails. Now, similarly, we have to think that what are the other areas where we can have effective guardrails at scale. Now, some of that might mean stricter enforcement, some of that might also mean stricter rules, but I think a lot of it will mean how we can use technology to address the harms which are arising because of the newer models and newer things which we are seeing because of technology. So I think in that sense, technology itself is a great enabler, and AI itself can be used a lot to track, to minimize, to prevent a lot of these harms.
Right, and finally, before I let you go, how big is this issue, coming back to IT services, how big a hit is the visa-related moves by the US, hiking fee, for instance, or going in for a weighted system, to the grant, for the grant of approvals itself, all the way to the social media vetting before applications are seen and approved. The cabinet had approved, had cleared a package of 45,000 crore, which was for exports, for MSMEs. We saw that in November. Would a similar package be useful for the Indian IT industry to enable it to face some of the headwinds that it's seeing in its largest market, US?
So I think just to reiterate, see, the initial surprise with the announcements, I think industry was very quick to adjust, and with the clarifications, I think we are seeing that the impact is incremental. And now, as I understand, that there is a time and before we will see how it plays out in the slightly longer run. So in that sense, it's a wait and watch. From an industry point of view, I think the biggest package will be a really significant ease of doing business reform, because that can really translate into efficiencies and productivity for our industry. And given that our industry is so much pan-India, it is no longer like it was 20 years ago that firms are operating out of Bangalore or Gurgaon. Now, most of the industry is pan-India, and many of the firms are global. So in that point of view, from that lens, I think ease of doing business is actually significant. So some of those things which I said in the beginning, if a lot of these things can actually be translated into action, I think industry will really benefit. And I think it will be unfair to look at taxation just from a direct tax or an international taxation lens. I think GST has a huge role to play in this. While it's not a budget item, but as we have seen last year, the government, to its credit, settled a very pertinent issue, the intermediary taxation issue. That was very significant. So similarly, we have been facing tax demands on the HOBO model because of lack of understanding of the model or the or in the way the GST law is being applied to the model. So I think there are areas under GST also where addressing some of these concerns including platforms, have some concerns. So addressing some of these concerns can translate into a huge set of reforms. Even the labor codes which have come in, I think largely these are being welcomed because they do provide standardization and harmonization. But again, we have to look at some of the unintended effect in terms of how some of these can have retrospective effect. So areas which can have such retrospective effect, I think there's an opportunity to clarify and set right some of these things. I think that's all from my side on what we can hope and discuss from an industry lens on at this point in time.
And finally, the results season has kicked in. We have seen TCS and HCL Tech. And while I'm not going to ask you company-specific issues, what is the final prognosis on whether there would be a revival in tech demand? Client spendings have been slow over the last many quarters. Do you see a rebound, a revival happening there, and when?
So honestly, I'm probably not the right person to comment on it, but I think what we should look out for as Nasscom is that we do publish our annual report, which we'll be doing at our flagship event NTLF in the month of February. So that is when our estimates for this year will be out, and they are now being finalized. So like you, even I'm waiting for some of that, and we look forward to that.
We've seen the labor code implementation affect this time in the quarterly numbers, both for the two companies, both for the companies that came out with the results, both for TCS and HCL Tech. A significant part of it coming in due to the labor code implementation as well.
I think there is a implementation journey. So I think companies will do what they need to do as per the accounting standards and as per the available information. But I think we should look at it as a journey which will go on for a few months and maybe more. And as in and when the clarity actually emerges in terms of the rules and in terms of the actual implementation of the law, I think we will be able to better assess the actual implication. So I don't think it will be fair for me to comment at this point in time.
And are layoffs finally over, the big part of it that people were anticipating and fearing, or will AI bring more layoffs?
I think that has been an ongoing conversation. I think AI, as we still see it, is largely a big opportunity. I think a huge part of Nasscom and industry is focused on enabling talent to skill and upskill. And I think it is, in some sense, future is in our hands. So, and it's still out there. So I think we have to take this, we have to navigate this journey together. And I don't think there is a analysis which can say that this is the future ahead. I think it is still out there being made. So I think, yes, that's my answer on that.